All right, let's do it. All right. I like messing things up and have fun with it and laugh. That's the important.
I'm learning to embrace mistakes. I'm learning.
Oh,
I'm getting
yes,
better
that's
and better.
hard for engineers. Okay.
Yes, it is.
Go for it.
Hi, this is Ken Green, the host of the Engineer of Finance podcast, and you're listening to Vroom, Veer with Jeff Smith.
Well done, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You engineered that.
I did. And it came out. I got it done. So let's get it right the first time.
Let's knock it out. Yes. All right. I'm going to hit stop. I'll be right back.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Kelley Sgroi, thank you so much for being on Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's great, Jeff. Thanks for having me. Super excited.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So talk a little bit about what you're most excited about in your business today.
Oh, well, so what I'm most excited about in my business today is to have an impact on other women that, have felt unseen, unheard, felt like they've been kind of going through the motions and adhering to those traditional roles and expectations that are like given out when we're little girls that are told this is how you're supposed to behave. And really just showing women how to show up confidently and make an impact, however that is in their own lives, whether it's, a small impact or a big impact, we get to choose that. So that's really my passion.
It sounds awesome. And I think you're loving it right now. You look like you're in a good spot.
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's one of those things where if you had told me 10 years ago, like my passion in life would be to work with other women, I don't know if I would have agreed with you. But,
there you go.
Because as women, the things that we see and that we're taught is that like women knock each other down and then climb over the top of each other. And
really?
That had been my experience for such a big part of my life.
Wow.
And after going through so much
that we're going to talk about. Yes.
Yeah. Those memes that you sit there and you're like, wow, sometimes I just sit and think about all the crap I've been through.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was me. And then I'm like, wow, I have like this journey that could inspire. I never thought of it as inspiring, but then people would be like, wow, that's so inspiring. And I'm like, wow, I could really help people. And for me, that was the whole point of all of the struggles, why go through that? Why was I put through that in this experience, if for no other reason than to use it to help other people get through their struggles?
Right. And I think that we're going to get into that today. I know and most other podcasts, they say, tell us a little bit about yourself and you get about 30 seconds, right? Yeah. And then you talk about businessy stuff.
Sure.
This whole show is going to be about that. So that's awesome, different. Yeah. You get to tell the story, which sounds like it's part of your mission. So I think
it really is.
There you go. So let's get into it. So I'm going to give some people some highlights about what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about your eating disorder when you were like about between 15 and 18. And then you were married at 23. You had some infertility issues. You had premature triplets. And then there was a divorce at age 38. It's already deep. All right. This is like a movie of the week already. Right. And we're not even halfway through it. And then you get cancer. Right. Yep. Okay. We're going to talk about that. And the coup de grace is the story of the boyfriend that leaves you high and dry with no passport overseas.
Correct. Welcome to my soap opera life. Right?
Yeah, but it's, I know you went through it, and thank you and congratulations, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Right. Well, and there's a few other pieces in there too that
we can hit those too. I just hit the highlights.
The timeline.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, It's definitely been an experience, for sure. You know, everything that has happened shaped me to be the woman I am today. So do I ever want to relive most of those things? No.
Right.
But
of course not.
You know, I'm not, I do have some gratitude for them, you know, and
right. The silver lining, right. The now
absolutely.
of it, the now of it.
Yeah,
right.
They got me here.
Right.
So, yeah. So tell me how you want me to start from the beginning.
Let's talk about where you grew up and what your childhood was like.
Yeah. So that starts my story. I was born and raised in Connecticut. I am adopted. I was adopted when I was 6 weeks old. So I think this was the, you know, the culmination of where everything started. You know, I had this belief system about myself that I needed to be perfect, because if I wasn't perfect, I was going to be given back. I was so damaged that my own mother didn't want me.
Wow.
And other people got me, you know, and that was great. I have amazing parents. I'm an only child in my adoptive family that raised me.
Right.
I do have a biological brother and sister. And I also kind of knew that there were siblings. You know, when I was old enough to understand, I knew that I had siblings, which contributed to my thought of, well, why was I given up? You know, how was I so broken as a baby that my own mother didn't want me?
Sure. That's a lot for a child to deal with. That's a lot.
And well, you know, and I know one of the things, we have so much more awareness about adoption today, but you know, back then we didn't talk about it. Everything was secret. You know, today we have, you know, adoptions that are open and people communicate with each other. Right. But I was like, you know, adopted through the state. There was a social worker. All the records were sealed. Like it was like a hush hush thing.
Right. Right.
And, you know, I heard so many people tell me, wow, you're so lucky. You know, you have such great parents, which is all true. But when they said it, what I heard was, you're so
don't
lucky
screw it up.
Yeah, right. You're so lucky anybody wanted you, you know? And that's what I heard.
Okay. Wow.
And I remember being in like first or second grade, and some of the kids, and you know how mean kids can be at that age. Some of the kids found out I was adopted, and you know, some of the little boys were like, wow, you're so ugly, even your mother didn't want you.
Wow.
And, you know, we just don't realize how those things affect us, you know?
Right. So you actually start to believe that.
I absolutely believed it. And I vividly remember fighting with my parents, like not getting my own way and having a major temper tantrum and being like, you can just take me back. I'm the worst kid in the world, you know? And I remember these conversations.
Wow.
And really just like how that really drove so much of my life. And that's what led me into this eating disordered way. Like,
right.
I felt like if I kept the outside perfect, no one would notice that I was that damaged.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So keep that appearance perfect. I learned what was acceptable for like our bodies, and, you know, all the people on TV were models, and all the popular kids were tiny and they had cute clothes, and, you know, bought into that society's idea of what was appropriate.
Right.
And I mean, I had no idea that any of this was going on. It wasn't until I was about 15 or 16 where I like would exercise like a crazy person. And one of my friends sent me this article, and she's like, I think you might have this like exercise bulimia thing. Well, that was great to me, because now I had like,
at least you had a label.
Focus on. Yeah. I'm like, oh, look I have this. Yeah. This makes sense.
Okay.
So, you know,
so describe how does that present? Exercise bulimia.
Basically what, you know, at that point in time, it was the exercise was my way to purge. So
wow. Oh my goodness.
I would basically restrict what I ate. And then if I ate, it didn't matter what it was, I would exercise. So I specifically remember one year, like on a day of a picnic or something, every time if I ate anything, I'd go for like a 3-mile walk. Oh, I just ate a hamburger. I got to go for a walk. I just ate a bowl of watermelon. I got to go for a walk. Like I would do aerobics, and those were back in the days of Jane Fonda,
right.
jumping
I remember
around the living room.
Those VHS tapes. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh my God. I did them like,
you wore those out.
My parents would be like, my gosh, stop rocking the house with your jumping around. And
right.
And it got to be so obsessive, it was very obsessive. And I always was thinking about what to eat and what not to eat, and could I eat, and then hiding food, and then not eating for days, and feeling so powerful when I didn't eat, and hating myself for eating. And oh my gosh, it was exhausting.
Yeah. Wow.
Totally exhausting.
Yeah. And you can't be like physically healthy at all.
No, yeah.
And you're supposed to be like the peak of fitness and health in your teens, and
exactly,
and you're not.
Yeah, right. Right. Like I had, I was dealing with shin splints and all kinds of injuries from exercising.
And it
so
also
much.
Now we know too that when you're doing that sort of like you're basically fasting a lot, right? And binge fast. That really affects your brain chemistry a lot.
Absolutely. It's interesting you say that, because I have some connections, because I work with some kids with eating disorders now.
Right.
And I had somebody from a facility send me some images of an anorexic brain of an adolescent,
right,
and how restricting affects the brain. And we don't know yet from whether or not that ever goes back to normal.
Wow. So, especially when you're young, because your brain is still developing. So,
yeah. And, I've read so much research today that says, like our young girls start dieting now at age 6.
That's scary.
Think about it. We're not even developing, like they're not even developed. They don't even have physical development at age 6, right? They haven't gone through puberty yet.
Right.
And they're already on diets.
Oh, that says a lot.
It does. That is what, that's what the selfie nation and social media is teaching us these days.
Yeah.
So that is one area that I work with women on, that emotional eating piece, because,
right.
you can't escape from food. We need it.
Right. You have to eat.
Yeah. So for me, that really blew up when I went away to college.
Okay.
I went away actually in my freshman year of college. I went to 3 different schools because I had the tendency to, want to fit in so bad, but never felt like I fit anywhere.
Right.
And so I did a whole lot of like burning my bridges.
Okay.
And feeling like, I need to go somewhere else now, because these people were my friends. I've worn
these people out. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They were my friends, but now they're not. And I did something stupid, and now I need to run away.
Okay.
So we did a lot of that for, those first couple of years, and went down to school. I actually came down to Florida for school. I went to Florida State, and being that far away and really just not having a clue who I was, threw my eating disorder into, its peak.
Right. Okay.
I was taking laxatives, like packages by packages, and
Wow.
I was just really sick. And so I made the decision then to go to a treatment facility there in Miami. My parents flew down to Florida, and I went into this treatment facility, and I was there for 3 months, and it was a great facility. It was just like a halfway house for women with eating disorders.
Wow.
And I really got a clear understanding of what was going on with me, like why I was acting this way. And I don't know if that the whole premise of it, like food and weight and diet, nutrition, it's always been a struggle for me.
Okay.
Even since then. But I think in adulthood, just having a better understanding of it. Like I know now today when I feel like my distorted thinking gets in the way, I know something more is going on that has nothing to do with my body or what I'm eating.
Yeah.
So, but as a kid, we don't understand these things, right? We don't have that development in our brain yet to know, hey, this is more about what you're thinking, not what you look like.
Sure. And it gets all tied up with like your self-image and your body image and
Yeah.
And that psychology of identity.
Exactly.
And yes. Yeah.
Exactly. Like wanting to hide in your clothes because you didn't want people to see the flaws and until it looked perfect and not ever feeling like you looked good enough. You know, that whole good enough thing
it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it? And I tell
it's
people
weird
today,
how much I don't know, it's not just you and me.
Right. No, it's everyone.
It's everyone.
Yeah.
I know.
It's the common theme, the good enough. And people are like, well, I just don't feel good enough. And I'm like, well, how do you even measure it? Like, how do you know when you get to good enough?
Right.
Like, how do I know I got there?
If the measuring stick is, are you perfect without fault? Then that's everybody. Nobody's perfect without fault. Right. Everybody makes mistakes. It's one of these things where it's like we're all dreaming we're in this TV show or movie or something about ourselves.
Yes, I say that all the time. We are in a movie. Yeah,
right.
We're in a movie. Yeah.
In our heads.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't see ourselves the way that we others perceive us.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So now fast forward just a little bit till so I met my now ex-husband when I was about 21.
Okay.
And around that same time, I ended up meeting my biological family.
Wow.
So oddly enough, I had decided.
This is us kind of story now.
Exactly. So
this is you,
I've been
right?
dating
Okay, this is us, right?
Yeah, right. Kind of.
Yeah.
This is me,
right?
I feel like I should be on Sally Jesse Raphael or something. Yeah,
it's okay.
I should be on one of those Maury Povich or something like that.
You're being really brave right now, so thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah. So I had reached out to, my parents had always told me if I wanted to look for my biological family, they would support me. So when I was dating my now ex-husband, I had decided, we had started talking about getting married and I knew I wanted to have a family and I have no biological information. And this seemed to be important to me because he had this really close family and I didn't feel like I had that other than my parents. And so I reached out through the state and they go through the social services department.
Right.
And come round about Valentine's Day, I come home and my parents aren't home. And I'm like, oh, I don't know where they are, whatever, no big deal. They usually tell me when they're going out. Well, they come home to tell me, oh, well, we met your birth mother tonight. So,
what?
So oddly enough, she wanted to make sure when she found that I was looking for her, she wanted to make sure that I wasn't looking for somewhere to live.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She wanted to know why I was looking for her.
Okay.
And so my parents met her and I then met her and I have a brother and sister that are biological, both mother and father. The story behind it was that she was 16 when she had my brother and sister, my brother at 16, my sister at 17, and then me when she was 21.
Okay.
But that she was divorced from our father and I was a product of a rape.
Wow.
So now I became, in my mind, a dirty little secret.
Right. Wow.
So yeah, this great stuff, So
that's a lot. It's already been a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It gets so much more fun. I laugh. You
have to laugh. You have to laugh.
You can't make this up. You know.
Right.
I sometimes go like, why? What's the purpose? So I had a relationship with my sister for a while. I didn't have much of a relationship with my brother. He had some drugs and alcohol in his life. My biological mother turned out to be the most controlling person I'd ever met. And so over the years, we ended up having, falling outs, and I actually cut ties with my biological sister right around the time that COVID started last year for good. I haven't spoken to her since.
Wow.
There was just a lot of drama and chaos in that whole family, and it didn't feel good to me.
Right.
And I made that decision that I was just tired of being caught up in. There was no reason. I didn't feel any connection to them.
Right.
And I don't know what I expected, but there was no connection. And I just decided it was not a healthy thing for me.
It's good.
So,
Nothing wrong
I
with
cut
that.
ties with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did get married, and I got married when I was 23. I was just about to turn 24. So we're married a couple of years and decide, it's time to start a family, and I'm not able to get pregnant. And so, the perfectionist in me is like, well, I can't even do this right.
Right.
I can't even
Everything's
do what
Kelley's fault. Right. Yes.
Yeah. I can't even do what a woman's supposed to do. Like, I can't even get pregnant,
Right. Wow.
So I did infertility, ended up getting pregnant and finding out at 10 weeks that I was pregnant with triplets. So
that happens with infertility treatments. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
right.
Yeah, people would ask me, like, I'm still dumbfounded. First of all, like all the people that asked me if they were natural, and then all the people have asked me, like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? What am I going to do? They're like, how are you going to take care of triplets? And I'm like, I didn't see that as a box on the paperwork. Like, nobody asked me, are you prepared to do this?
You just got to deal with it.
They just said, guess what? There's 3.
Right. Right. You got to take them home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have a choice. So
right.
I went on bed rest at 20 weeks in my pregnancy. And my body quit on me at 30 weeks, 5 days. About 30 weeks, it was like done. It was like, I felt like I had like this never ending flu.
Wow.
And at that point, my own body was poisoning me on top of poisoning my kids. Wow. So they did a C-section at 30 weeks, 5 days. And so my kids were born, and they weighed 312, 215, and 115.
Wow.
So,
super preemies.
Yeah, very preemie.
Right.
9 weeks early. They remained in the hospital for 6, 7, and actually 7, 8, and 9 weeks. So my son Jared came home at 7 weeks, and my daughter came home next, and then my other son Ryan, they came home each a week apart. And that's about when I lost it and was like, what the heck do I do with these 3 screaming babies?
Right.
Yeah, it was a rough year. And, but we we managed. Things were great. As great as things get.
After you get over the shock.
Yeah, after we got used to the routine, and, my husband was very involved because he had to be. I went back to work part-time. Our parents were involved.
That's good.
So,
so you had the support.
Yeah, things were good. I mean, I think things were really good till we had been married about 10 years. Things started to just change, that he changed a lot because of the responsibility of having this instant family.
Right.
And we went into serious, responsible parenting mode. Everything revolved around them, and our relationships suffered.
Of course.
And again, I had these huge issues with attachment and not feeling good enough. So I took everything as, well, I'm just not good enough at this.
Right. And it's all about me not being perfect, not being enough.
Yes. If I was perfect, none of this would be happening.
Right. Everybody else can do this. Why can't I? Right.
Exactly.
What's wrong with me? Right. And it's all my fault.
It was all my fault, all the struggles that the kids, and it was really difficult to go, wow. First I felt even worse because I knew every detail of my children's birth, yet my own biological mother didn't even know my birthday.
Right.
These things drove me. They were like, how can you give up a baby? I looked at my kids and there was so much love. It was painful. And then what it said to me was, well, you really were damaged if your own mother didn't want you.
Right.
Yeah, and, for years, I wouldn't realize until 4 or 5 years ago, how much of an impact this had on me. But I guess, now looking back, it was a huge driving force in so much of the decisions and the relationship failures, the things that just didn't work out because I just was not good enough. I wasn't ever measuring up. I wasn't going to reach that level of perfection.
Let me ask you.
Yeah.
So when I was about that age, so early 20s, I went through depression that included a couple of suicide attempts.
Sure.
When I came out of that, okay, when in the rear view, okay, after I sort of like got over the depressive state, and then later on, I hadn't really dealt with it. I just got to the fuck it stage. I was just like, okay, I don't want to commit suicide, and I'm taking life way too seriously. I just decided to say fuck it a little bit.
Yeah.
and that got me off of depression. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
But I wasn't well. Okay. I was just a little bit better. Okay.
Right. You didn't want to die.
Right.
Yeah.
And some, through fate and everything else, right? I didn't. Right. So, and then some people were like, I think, you just need to take a step back and realize like you're taking things way too seriously at work, in life, in general, right? You just need to step back from that a little bit. Did you feel any of that or not? Like you were
I didn't
any of that reprieve, I guess.
I didn't feel any of that until like just a few years ago. Like there were pieces of that. It's not like I felt like this constant drive forever.
Right.
But
it was always there, right?
It was always this underlying, like, not only was I not enough, but there never was enough. Like I felt like I was constantly trying to fill this void that was never, it was like there was a hole in the bottom or something. Like, where is all this going? Because it's sure not filling me up.
Right.
And, like I would say I could feel alone, whether I was in the presence of, 100 people or by myself. I still felt just completely alone.
Right.
And that was huge to come to that realization. Like I know, and I take 100% responsibility for these things today.
Right.
Like I know that was
That's
all good. They were all in my mind. Yeah. Well, I blamed people long enough,
Right.
and,
right.
I tell the women I work with, like I looked around me and one day I realized there was one common denominator, me. That there was only, like, the only.
But that's huge, though. That's huge. That is huge.
And the only
congratulations
consistency in this story is me. Like I was the one thing that stayed the same.
And look. Yeah. I want to come out and say that shouldn't include blame. Okay, you can be responsible, but the word blame has sort of like this: you deserve to be punished aspect to it. We're being responsible. You can say I'm responsible, but I don't deserve to be punished. Does that make sense?
Yes, because that's when it shifted for me. When I finally accepted responsibility, because up until then I was blaming myself.
Right.
Up until that point.
And punishing yourself too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I was more perfect, this wouldn't be happening.
Right.
If I wasn't doing this, this wouldn't be happening.
Right.
And then I said, okay, I have to make a conscious decision here to take a look at this. Like, there's a lesson to be learned in this repeated behaviors. What is it?
Right.
And I had to really take a hard look at that. And that was not fun. Like,
no, it does suck.
Time.
Yes, it's hard. It's really, really hard. Yes.
When
looking at all of your own bullshit is like, it's the most valuable thing any human can do and the most painful.
It was painful.
Yes.
I wanted to throw up all the time. Like it was horrible
Cry,
to just
throw up.
Oh,
yes.
But
Run away.
Like, yes.
Hide. Yes.
But I had been doing that my whole life.
Right. Self-medicate.
Running away and
I drink.
Self-medicate. Exactly. You name it. Yeah.
Right. Eat.
So I had to take a look at that. Yeah.
Right.
And on the flip side of it, because I also had that push-pull going on, like don't get too close to me because then you have the ability to abandon me.
Right.
After I got divorced, I was like so super ultra like independent. Like I don't need anybody.
Right. You went to the island. Yes.
I did. I was like, I am gonna, because my ex-husband told me I'd never make it on my.
I am on Kelley Island, population of 1, and I need no one. Yes. Okay. I've been to Island Jeff Island.
You've been to Jeff. Yeah, Jeff has an island. Yeah, it's safe there on that island.
Yes,
right? Like,
yes,
it's safe.
It is safe and comfy.
Exactly. And sunny and warm, and there's no blizzards.
nobody to come in and judge you. Yes.
Exactly. I became ultra independent. And, my ex told me that, like, when I decided we were getting divorced, I had told him, I'm like, I just want a divorce. He said I'd never make it on my own. And so half of me was like, yeah, watch me. And the other half of me believed him,
right.
I was like, oh, he's right. How does he know? How does he,
right.
He knows,
Right.
So then I found a little condo. He kept the house, I'm not leaving the house. And I'm like, well, you're not taking my kids. And it was so painful for so long. Like I did that, like, which one? I have to be the good parent and he's got to be the bad parent. I was caught in that drama.
Right.
And so then my parents had been, down here in Florida for years as snowbirds. And I would come down here and then I would meet my next significant other who moved up north with me and his daughter. And so they were living with me for about a year. And that's when I was exercising one, because I was still on the exercise thing, can't give that up.
Right.
I was working out one day and I had like this stabbing pain on the side of my left breast. And I was like, what the heck's that?
That's new.
So I had never had that before.
Let's just ignore that.
Yeah.
It'll probably go away.
Maybe it'll go away. Yeah.
Am I reading your mind a little bit?
Yeah. So for the next 3 days, I was like poking around at stuff, trying to figure out why I had this pain there.
Right.
And now it hurts because I've been poking around so much.
Right.
So I decide to go to the doctor, and my doctor says, I don't think it's anything, but let's go for like an ultrasound.
Right.
So I go for an ultrasound, and the ultrasound technician is like, I'm going to have you sit in this little room and I'm going to talk to the radiologist, which is never a good thing.
Oh, geez.
So they come back in and they're like, we want to do a mammogram. Fast forward another 2 weeks, I'm diagnosed with breast cancer. So all within a whirlwind.
Hold on.
Yeah.
We have to take a breath on, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Yeah.
Take a breath. That's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, it was 2 days before my 41st birthday that I got my diagnosis. And that weekend, so by now I have had this biopsy, and I have 2 sons, and my sons think that, wrestling with their mom is the coolest thing.
Right. And they're how old at this point?
So they were, let's see, they were 13, I think.
Okay. All right. Gotcha.
So they're big.
Yeah.
And, so like I would joke with them, like, guys, you have to be careful with me. You're going to throw me through the wall and not just onto the couch.
Right.
When you wrestle. So they're trying to wrestle with me. And I'm like, you guys have to be careful. I just had a little procedure done and I'm sore because I had a biopsy.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, what do you mean you had a procedure? So, I have to explain to them that, I found something, they're checking it, but don't worry. So now I come home from this appointment, and now everybody knows that I have just had my results from my biopsy. I've just come back from the surgeon, and it is the evening of my daughter's musical production or a dance show she was in. So I'm leaving the doctor and I'm calling my mother, and I'm telling my mother on the phone, listen, I have breast cancer. Everything's going to be fine. I'm going to fill you in on everything that the doctor said, but you need to get this out of your system right now because this can't ruin Allie's night. Like, this is her night. This is her show. We need to deal with this right now. And she's like, okay. Like, that worked, right?
Okay.
Like my mother. Right?
No, right.
So yeah, she's like, okay. So I get home and my sons are like, so what'd the doctor say? And I'm like, so listen, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you, I'm like, I have cancer. And I go, and my son starts crying. And I'm like, I'm not going to die. And he's like, but Mr. So-and-so died from cancer. I'm like, okay, he had a different cancer. And
my cancer's not the die kind, right?
My cancer's not the dying kind. And I'm like, So I said, this is what will happen, but I'm not going to die from this. Now, I don't know that. I just am thinking this.
You're a good leader and a good mom at that point. Yeah.
So I spent that. And Jeff, I spent that weekend convincing everybody else that I wasn't going to die.
And you didn't believe it, but
I wasn't going to succumb to that belief system yet.
Good. Okay, good. It's got to be scary though.
It was scary.
The moment that you hear those words, right? It's just
I don't know what happened. Something kicked in for me. As a matter of fact, I didn't get scared until my very last chemo treatment. Because at that point in time, I just was like, do what you have to do and get rid of it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, I had mastectomies. I had reconstruction. I had 4 months of chemotherapy, and I wasn't scared until that last treatment. And then it hit me like, okay, nothing could live in my body while you're poisoning me within an inch of my life.
Right.
But what happens afterwards?
Right.
And so that was
it's kind of gets a little too real.
Yeah, it got real.
Right.
Yeah, it got real.
Yes.
It got real. Like, okay, now I have to find a way to live,
Right.
Like I've been surviving over the last couple months, but now I have to live.
Mm.
So I got through chemo, 4 months of chemo, I lost all my hair. When it grew back in white and soft like a bunny rabbit. So my kids would sit and pet me like I was a dog. I'm like, guys, really? I'm not a stuffed animal.
Oh, but you were so lucky to have those boys and your daughter.
It was so, the funny thing today
it's a blessing.
is I know.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I know I did a good job too, Jeff, because they don't remember any of the traumatic parts of it.
Wow.
They remember me not having hair, but they don't remember me being sick because I planned it so that the weekends after my treatment, they were with their dad.
Okay.
So they would come to the house after school, but then they would go, their dad would pick them up and they'd be there.
Gotcha.
So I would be, by the time they came back to me on that Monday, I would be rebounding from my Wednesday treatment. So I would be starting to feel better again.
Right. I have to ask a question. And it's going to sound weird.
No.
Did you get weed with your chemo?
I did not. I know. Afterwards, I was like, hey, why didn't they give me that? That might have, my girlfriend did. And I was like, why didn't I get that? Yeah, I guess my oncologist didn't like me.
You missed out on the best part of chemo.
I guess. Yeah. I'm like, damn.
Sorry. Whenever I see that, I think of the movie 50-50.
Yes.
I don't know. It's a cancer movie, and this guy, I think it was 50-50. I don't know. There's so many movies with cancer in it. Anyway, one of them included a big group of people all getting chemo and then smoking weed, or actually smoking weed while getting chemo. And I'm like, well, if you got to have chemo, there should be weed.
Right. What's the point? Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Well, today you can get weed for just about anything.
Right.
So, I mean,
right.
You just have
weed
to have
for anxiety. Yes.
Yeah. Don't get me started on that's a whole nother podcast altogether. So now here's the fun thing. It's just like sometimes I amaze myself when I listen to these things because I finished treatment on right around Mother's Day that year.
Okay.
And so I finished radiation. And then in July, so 2 months later, after finishing surgeries and radiation and chemotherapy, I went to Boston and I walked in the Komen 3 days. So the 60 miles in 3 days. Wow. Yeah. I did 60 miles in 3 days.
Bloody feet, blisters, and
yeah, it was incredible. Like,
it's a good experience, but oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was a lot.
It's a lot.
It was a lot, but it was definitely just amazing. The emotion that surrounded it.
Right.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah.
You connected to a family you didn't even know you wanted, or right.
Right. I didn't want to, but here you are,
family. Right.
And
breast cancer survivors or cancer survivors. Right. Right.
And I feel that whenever I go to an event like that, like I'm just immediately connected to women that were strangers 2 seconds before.
Right.
None of us wanted this relationship, but I looked at it like if I had to have breast cancer, I have to use it as a way to help other people.
Right.
Because otherwise it wins. If it takes everything out of me and it kills my spirit, then it just goes along with winning. And I refused. Like I had my head shaved because I refused to let it take my hair on its own. I'm like, I have no control over this. So
I want some power. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
You might take, I was like, you might take my boobs, but you're not taking my hair.
Amen, sister.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Well done.
So that was this September will be 10 years. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been, it's hard to believe. Time certainly flies.
Yeah.
So lo and behold, that relationship didn't work out. I feel like for me, and now that I have this insight into my life, I feel like that person came into my life a year before cancer and he left a year after cancer. And I almost feel like he was placed in my path for that reason.
Okay.
He took care of me. He took care of my kids.
Wow.
It was a blessing, but it wasn't
right.
It wasn't a healthy relationship, and it just ran its course, and it was what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I still have my own healing to do internally, emotionally.
Right.
So he moved on, and that's about when I met the
high and dry and overseas.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, and I wish I could say that was the only horrible thing he did.
Right. Okay.
I wish. But so I met this person, and 2 weeks into dating him, I ended it because he was the most negative, dramatic person I had ever met in my life.
2 weeks. Wow. Okay.
2 weeks. Like I knew immediately.
And in those 2 weeks, he was able to leave you overseas high and dry.
Oh, no. Oh, no. That's 3 years later. Because after breaking,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after breaking up with him, he begged me to give him another chance and let's make it work. And so I did, and it just was never good. And the kids and I moved in with him, and then he threw all our stuff out onto my front lawn of my condo that I still owned. And it was just let me just say, it was a tumultuous relationship.
Right.
So we had broken up, and then he obviously came back and forth, 3 years of back and forth, just to make a long story short.
Right.
And then as fate would have it, on my birthday, I looked out my window and I said, God, if it's meant to be, he's going to call me. Well, wouldn't you know, the next morning I get a text message from him, happy belated birthday. And I'm like, oh my God, it's fate. God is answering my prayer. Well, today I realized, I asked the universe for this, and it just said, okay, here you go. You asked for it. We're going to give it back to you. Have fun. Hold on tight.
Wow.
So interestingly enough, even my coworkers, within a couple days of being back in touch with this man, my coworkers were like, are you okay? You seem really anxious. My anxiety came back. It was amazing, how I was just on edge. But damn, it was fate, right? He made the mistake in his ways. And so we'll fast forward to 3 months down the road. We go on this vacation. Can't wait. So excited. Yeah. So on this trip, a bunch of stuff happens. Oh my gosh, it was just a nightmare. It was a nightmare from the first time, from the first day. But basically, I think he was cheating on me with someone we were traveling with while we were there.
Wow.
And I called him out on it, and he didn't like that.
Wow.
And he kind of flipped out on me in our hotel room, and then vanished. And then I heard from some other people that he checked out of our hotel room, which was true. He took all his stuff and he disappeared. And with him, he took my passport.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's the middle of the night. I'm in a foreign country.
No passport.
I can't get into passport. Can't get into my hotel room. Have to convince the hotel people that this is my room. And I'm like, he took my passport. And so they call the police. Now, so the police are like 12 years old in this country. And they come in and they look at me and they're like, well, at least you found out before you married him. And I'm like, well, that's all fine and well, but find my passport.
Right.
So I didn't
Let's deal with the deal.
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly. I had no flight information. I had no nothing. I was really stuck.
Right.
They located him. They got my passport back. I got left at the hotel the next day. I had to get a taxi to the airport. I actually had to fly home on the plane with all of these people who wouldn't speak to me because I don't know what they thought about me, or they were just afraid of him, so they didn't talk to me.
Wow.
I have not spoken to this person since, and that was over 4 years ago.
Right.
So I got back from that trip, and when I tell you I was afraid of my own shadow, that would be an understatement. I spent the next couple months really just like spiraling out of control.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, like literally, like I started drinking, and I was like, I was a basket case. And then I realized, okay, this is not like, I'm not going to get better doing this. So this is not going to end well for me. So
yes. Okay.
I found a really great therapist, and I was a therapist at the time, so I knew better. I found a really great therapist who would call me out on my BS and basically tell me, hey, bring the therapist back to the waiting room and bring me the real Kelley, because we need to get into this if you ever want to feel better.
Wow. That's
and
good.
Then she was awesome. She actually sent me on a spiritual journey.
Nice.
That really opened up my eyes to like, well, what she did to me was tell me that this guy was my soulmate, and I had a lot of choice words for her. And I was like, that's not true. And she goes, well, I don't mean it in the way of like, he's the one you're supposed to be with forever. But I mean that your souls made an agreement that this would happen so you could get to this point in your life. And I was intrigued by this, right? It's
an interesting idea, right?
Yes, I was intrigued by her philosophy. I trusted her.
Okay.
I had a lot of respect for her. She didn't do this on our first appointment because I would have ran out of there running, like screaming, like this lady's crazy.
Okay.
But I respected her a lot, and I wanted to hear what she had to say. So she recommended some books for me that I got and read. And now remember, I was miserable at this point. I hated myself.
Right.
I hated my life.
Right.
And I certainly didn't want to go on. My kids didn't want to be around me anymore. Like,
right.
I was a mess, and they didn't want to be around that. And I knew I was teaching them, what to put up with and how to be. And I was teaching my daughter that it was okay to allow people to treat you poorly. And I just didn't want to live like that anymore.
Good.
Like you said, you reach that point of, that's the crossroads. I had two choices. I could just self-destruct, or I had to take full responsibility for myself and make the changes. And it wasn't fun. But I did take her, to her books to heart. And I read some books on spirituality and our souls plan. And I really embraced this whole new philosophy.
Have you ever read any of the Eckhart Tolle books?
Yes.
Which one?
I had read
the New Earth, or
I've read The New Earth and The Power of Now.
Power of Now. So that when I read that, and I don't know if you accepted this proposition or not, but I don't remember which book it was in, but he said something about how he realized at a very low point, right, when he was sitting on that bench. And he couldn't stand himself, right? And he was like, there can't be two me's. There can't be, right? Right? You remember this?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Right? And then he was like, he had built this whole philosophy of how you're not your story.
You're not.
Right. Right. And that really, I kind of wanted to believe it and couldn't for a long time.
Agreed. I'm right there with you, right? So I also am a huge advocate, a huge believer in the Four Agreements and
Right.
And I've been reading and listening to the Four Agreements what seems like 100 years.
Right.
And it's only been the last
It takes
3
a
years.
while.
Yeah.
It takes a while.
3 years, I live them now. And
Okay.
they make so much sense to me now.
Right.
But that piece right there, you are not your story.
It's huge.
That is so huge.
Right.
Because for so long, I lived by this thought process that my parents instilled in me, right? They would tell me, wow, you can't catch a break. Nothing, just when you think you're ahead, something hits you again. And I loved that because it gave me an excuse to stay stuck.
Right.
It gave me an excuse to stay negative and unhappy. And I was like, well, I just can't get a break. Everyone's against me. Right.
Right. So you're buying into that's you. Yes.
I had someone say to me a couple of weeks ago, I must have pissed the universe off. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. You can't piss the universe off.
You're right. You can't.
But it's giving you what you're asking for and what you're putting out there. And if you're putting crap out there, guess what? You're getting a huge pile of it shoved back at you.
Right. Be careful which door you knock on is what I liked.
Yes. Exactly. So I really embraced this. I loved this spiritual component because I've always
it gets you to think about things like ego dynamics and identity and all those things that really you don't even see it in therapy that much. So I'm glad because you get to the people that are just basically philosophers and thinking about things. You don't even need the woo-woo crap, in my opinion. The woo-woo is fine if that's your thing. I'm not against it, but it's just it's a way of thinking rationally is the way I think of it. Yes.
Yes. It's a way of getting out of your own freaking way.
Right.
I looked at it like, this is not about me being in control. This is about me accepting my choices.
Right.
Like, we're so focused, I think, in our society on good and bad, right and wrong, instead of just what is.
Right.
Like we spend more time trying to prove it. Yeah.
Yeah. Loving what is.
Exactly. And sometimes what is not so great. And I have a choice, right? I go, when I'm standing at that fork in the road and I'm looking at a problem, I can't solve the problem when I'm stuck in the problem.
Right.
So I need to take a step outside of the problem so I can see the solution.
You have to put space around it. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And this approach changed. It really changed my life. It really brought me to the point where instead of being a victim, I became my own hero.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. Instead of waiting for someone to rescue me, I saved my own ass.
Who would I be without my story?
Yeah. Right.
Who would I be without my story? Right. That makes you step back. Right.
Instead of being my story, instead of being all the brokenness that I heard in my story, I decided to be the person that lived through that story and now has the chance to create, my own vision of it. Like I can create
now it's the hero's journey.
It is.
Yes.
And that is really
right. You went through the shit and now you have the power. Now you have the torch.
Right. And I tell people all the time, like, you get to choose how you write your story.
Right.
Once you have the awareness that you're in control, that you're the creator,
right.
Then the power is all yours. Like every night when I go to bed now, I thank the universe for the abundance in my life. Does that mean that my bank account is always in the positive? No.
Right.
But it does mean I always see the abundance in my life.
Right.
I have gratitude for every little thing, even, the smallest things today. I have gratitude for the sun when I see it shining on the water, because I know today that I'm not meant to live on this planet and be miserable. We weren't designed for that.
No.
But I can choose that.
You can.
and I did.
You can. Me too. Yeah.
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 And then I go, well, did that feel good? Like, how does that serve me? Well, it certainly didn't serve me.
Did that make me more healthy or less healthy?
Right. Well, for you, it led you to suicidal ideations and suicide attempts, right?
Right.
Like, let's stay in this.
Right.
Yeah. I call it that running in quicksand thing. Like, you can keep running.
Right. And then you'll go deeper.
You're not going. Exactly.
You go deeper.
Or you can grab onto the darn branch that I'm holding out for you.
And get out.
And get out. And let's start there. And, you know, again, that stuff's not easy. It's not easy to look at your mistakes and accept them, especially when you've been striving to be perfect.
When you tell people that they're not their story, it doesn't really, it takes like 3 years for that to have any sort of meaningful effect.
Yes. Or that they, like, I talk about a lot, the law of attraction and the power of deliberately manifesting and even just mindset shifts, like mindset shift. Like you can think this way, or you can shift that to this way. Right. And people look at me like, but how do I do that? I'm like, just change what you think about. Think about when I say to somebody, if you have anxiety, check in with your brain. What are you thinking about? More often than not, you're thinking about something that's not making you happy. Because I don't get anxiety when I think about something that makes me happy.
Right.
So I choose to not think about the things that give me anxiety, like stuff that isn't even happening yet.
Yeah. Saying and breathing, that helps. Eating right, exercise, that helps. Exactly. It always has like a physical component too.
Without a doubt.
When I hear people saying, like, asking questions about why am I depressed? Why am I feel lonely? Why do I feel isolated? I'm like, well, you're probably isolated. But the first thing you should do is get outside and get some fresh air and sunshine and maybe take a walk, right? That really helps.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know, in the whole recovery world, they'll say move a muscle, change a thought.
Right.
Get up and move. Get out of your shit. Get up.
So true. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I tell people that all the time. If you're feeling bad, do 10 jumping jacks. I guarantee by the time you're done, you won't feel bad anymore because your brain can't stay there. You need to interrupt the cycle.
What do we call that? I had a really good word for that. Pattern interrupt.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yes. And it's a true thing.
Like a hot shower, a walk in the park, cold shower. Cold shower always works.
That'll wake you up anyway.
Hey, Kelley, this has been a blast. As we wrap up, let's talk about how people can best find everything about Kelley Sgroi.
Yeah, so they can find me. They can find me on my website, which is pretty simple. It's Kelley Sgroi, lmhc.com.
Perfect. There's a link in the show notes.
Yeah, they can find me on Facebook. I am under Kelley Bannon Sgroi.
Okay.
And also I have a group for women called Know Your Worth.
Nice.
So they can look that up on Facebook.
Right.
You can find me on Instagram. You can Google my name.
Right. And it's spelled Kelley, and then Sgroi is Sgroi. I got it right.
Sgroi. Yes.
Right.
Thank the Sicilian ex-husband's family for that name.
And the Kelley has the extra E, so Kelley. Right.
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you, because I know you probably do this more than just me, this sharing your whole story, but that takes a lot of courage to do that. Even if it was not public, but this is public kind of.
Yeah.
So in a couple of weeks, 3,000 more people are going to know your story. So, look forward to that.
Yeah. Well, then they know how to veer, right? You want to veer.
Yes.
There's a reason why we call it veer. It's not like take a gentle turn. It's like, let's veer to the opposite direction.
It sounds like this.
Yeah, very much so. Mine was more like, that
a crash,
that sound that Wile E. Coyote makes when he's falling off the cliff before he hits. Like, yeah, that was me.
We should do this more because, I'm 52 and you're 50, right?
Yeah.
So we're basically one of the few living Gen Xers on the planet.
Yeah. Right.
So thank you so much, Kelley. This has been a blast, and I appreciate you sharing and being so open and honest and courageous.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I hope it helps somebody else. That's all.
Will. It helps me.
I'm sure. Good.
Thank you. All right. Have a good one. Take care.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.